Hi, welcome to the Grace Company. I'm Nathan Erznosnik, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about a couple simple things. Free motion quilting. What is it briefly, and then how does it relate to the machines that we have behind us? One of the things I'm excited to talk about, amongst others today, is what free motion can do for you and how it can help you complete more quilts in less time, and then how by doing something or doing free motion quilting with a machine like this even increases your speed and makes it even more simple. So stick with us as we go through this over the next few minutes to talk about free motion quilting. Again, one of the things I wanted you to identify as I'm standing in front of them is that we have some frames, and we have these machines that sit on these frames. And I first wanted to really just quickly talk about the frames that are in front of you here. I want you to think about if there has been any finished quilt that you have. Do you have one quilt top? Do you have 3? Do you have 5? Do you have any special events that you are trying to complete a quilt for? Is there a birth of a new grandchild or a son or a daughter? Do you have any kind of an event, a wedding, a graduation, or anything else that you might be thinking, I really wish, or I would like to know if there's a way to get this done easier and quicker in finishing your quilts? Well, that's part what we're going to look at, and the first thing we need is the frame. The frame is an item that allows your machine or a machine like this to be moved over the surface. And so I want to briefly talk about differences in frames and some considerations you would need to have at home. Think about this. Usually people are trying to decide, if I'm thinking of quilting, I have my machine and I'm pushing my fabric through, and you might have heard out there, oh, I've heard of mid or long arm machines, but you've always thought maybe they're really expensive, and boy, they sure take up a whole lot of space. Well, you can start with something like this, which we call a hoop style frame. This hoop style frame has a couple clips and clamps that allow our fabric to fit over the surface of it, and it stays all within this space. And so what we're looking at here on this side is about a 4.5 foot frame, so 4.5 feet from left to right, and about 4 feet from front to back. And the nice thing about a hoop style, if you think about hand quilting, if you've ever seen anybody hand quilt with a hoop, you drape that quilt over the surface and then you quilt it. A hoop style frame is exactly that. The fabric drapes over the surface and allows you to literally complete any size quilt, whether it's a small quick throw, whether it's a little baby blanket, or whether it's a king size quilt. Utilizing a hoop style frame does not limit the size of the quilt that you can complete. So that's one thing I would like you to consider. Are you somebody who has limited space? Are you somebody who doesn't want to give up an entire room in order to put a big frame or a big system in there? You can start with something as small as actually 4 feet with a hoop style. Again, this one here, we have it on some legs. You can adjust them for sitting or standing and put your chair in front of them. This particular one will actually accommodate several domestic machines. Right now, we are showing a 15-inch machine, and ultimately, you can also put a 19-inch machine on this. Also, I would encourage you to go to graceframe.com or reach out to your local dealer to find out about a tabletop version of something like this, which allows you to store it in a closet or put it away so that you don't actually have to ever dedicate any space. So yes, you can quilt any size quilt with a frame similar to this on a tabletop version or one with legs that you can bring into your home using about 4x4 space. So it's really nice and very convenient. Here to my other side is what we call a roller frame. This particular type of frame, and now it looks a little bit small, I built this one down at half of its size, but normally it's extended at twice that. It's normally 8 feet wide. In fact, in the industry, you can buy frames out to 12 foot and even bigger. This one allows you to put the fabric, instead of draping over, we call it a roller frame, the fabric rolls around the rail. I'm just gonna kind of just jump to the side, but the rails roll, and so we put the fabric on and then it brings and feeds the fabric into the machine side. So I'm gonna kind of see if we can jump to this camera over here a little bit. I know we can see some of this, so I just kind of wanna point this out with this machine as we're looking at this. So again, here is this roller frame. We'll see this rail in the throat of the machine. I'm going to release it again just to show you. What we can do is this fabric rolls, and that fabric rolls together around a rail. These frames do limit the size of the quilt that you can complete. The fabric actually has to be inside the sides of the frame, so the fabric cannot drape on the outside because it has to be rolled on. So the idea thing to think about is, depending on the size of a roller frame, your fabric and quilts would need to be smaller than the size of the frame. Again, this one's set up at a demo size, so this one's right around 4.5 feet as well. However, the biggest piece that you can quilt usually is in the middle. You need right around 7 inches on each side. So this one gives you just under 40 inches of quiltable space on something like this. When it's expanded out to a queen size, you can actually quilt up to an 84-inch quilt on this. But the nice thing to remember is that, again, your fabric is basted and it comes all together, so there is no basting, since the frame does that for you by bringing that fabric together. Again, this isn't to show you a whole lot about how that works. I'd encourage you to go online at graceframe.com or reach out to your dealer. But this type of frame manages your fabric. It stays inside, but you do need a much larger footprint. So if we kind of consider the two of these again, how much space do you have in your home is the first consideration. If you don't have a lot, we'd recommend a hoop frame. The nice thing is you can do any size quilt without limits. The item with this one is we do manage the fabric a little bit different, so we touch it a little bit more often. So people do often like the roller frame if they do have a wider or a much larger area. The current version that you're looking at here is our Q-Zone Queen. It's actually set up at half size, normally goes to queen, but yes, you can get frames that are much larger. You can get 10 and 12 foot frames as well. So think about that from a free motion quilting, is that there are tools that you can begin with your domestic machines. Currently, what I'm going to demonstrate here quickly and briefly is our 15 series machines. So we have 3 that I'll get into for a minute. But think about that. Free motion quilting, starting with a frame, looking at a space. The next thing we like to talk about is a little bit of a budget. But before we get to that, I want to talk about why would we free motion quilt? Well, one of the key things that we do is, instead of sitting down with your domestic and pushing and pulling the fabric, if we kind of take a look at these machines, what we end up getting is an ability to take that machine and it moves over the surface of the frame. So again, we're not looking for close-ups, but I can turn the machine on, the machine will sew, and what I can do is I now, instead of moving the fabric, I can very, very gently and very lightly take the machine and move the machine over the surface of the frame, which is wonderful. So no longer do we need to struggle and push and pull the fabric. We simply let the frame manage the fabric. We turn on the machine and the machine glides over the surface. The next thing I want to talk about is one of these 3 machines. Which one might I go with if I decided to move into a Midarm system? We have 3 machines in the series. They all have the same stroke. So what that means is the distance from the front where the needle is and then the back of the machine. And you'll notice that as I pull this out, we can go clear back until the machine hits. So we can sew clear from the front all the way to the back. And what a Midarm machine will do is it gives you more finished quiltable space. So again, less moving fabric, less rolling fabric. You can quilt more at one time, or you can quilt bigger blocks. And so you might think of, well, why does somebody move to a 19 machine? Why do they move to 21? It's all conveniences. So again, I go back to that budget question. The budget brings in conveniences. It brings in a variation of frames that you can use, and it brings in a variation of price points on machines. Quickly, I'm going to talk about these 2. This is our manual machine. What that means is that the machine is turned on and it operates at a fixed speed. You can adjust those speeds up or down, but they stay constant at that speed regardless of how fast or slow I move the machine. Popular machine, because its price is one of the lowest you can find, not only here with Grace Company, but in the industry, starting with a manual machine. However, we do find that a lot of people prefer and move to what we call a stitch regulated machine. And I want to show you briefly what the stitch regulated machine does and why there's a difference. First, you'll notice that the display is quite a bit different. It tells me a lot more information. Instead of being a percentage between your 1 and 100%, we actually can choose up to 4 different modes. Right now, I just briefly want to demonstrate what we call precise mode. What this does is, as you move that machine, it will speed the machine up, and as you slow down, it will slow that machine down automatically. If we were talking about a car, if you think about it, this one is like starting your car if you're stopped, and automatically starting at 30 miles an hour and then you stop. There's no gradual speed up as it goes, and it's much harder for you if you're in traffic to start and stop at a fixed speed. The stitch regulation is more like the ability for you to use your gas pedal to manage and to always be in the flow of traffic. The nice thing is you don't have to do it. I'm going to turn it on, is that it does it for you. So this is precise. I'm going to turn it on by pushing the big right button on the right. When I speed up, it speeds up, and you'll notice when I come to stop and slow down, it stops. And so you can hear it a little bit. So this machine will speed up and slow down. And it automatically does that because it does have the stitch regulation. So this is the R machine. This is the manual, which doesn't have stitch regulation. You can upgrade it if you want. So if you get into the manual, later you can upgrade it and add the stitch regulation. In the stitch regulation, or in our R model, you end up with 4 modes. You end up with stitch regulation precise. We have a cruise. And what cruise does is cruise keeps the needle always moving. So as an example, this is precise. When I stop, and if the machine's not moved, that machine needle stops. And then when I go to begin, the machine needle moves. If I go down to our cruise mode, when I turn the machine on, it will stitch regulate with me. But when I stop, the machine won't come to a complete stop. So some people prefer this if I'm doing decorative stitching and I need to fill a space. That way the machine continues to stitch as you work through and fill it without having to move it. It also has 2 other wonderful features. It has a basting feature for basting your quilts, and it actually has the same feature the manual machine does. It has a manual feature. Stitch regulation allows you to choose the difference in your stitch sizes from down to 4 up to 16 stitches in an inch. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of features at an amazingly reasonable price. So those are the 2 machines as we've looked at those. So that's the 15M, the 15R. And what I have over here on my other side is our 15 Pro. So I'm going to kind of finish part of this by talking about the 15 Pro. Why might somebody move across this range, or why might somebody go to the Pro? The Pro is our top of the line 15 machine. It has a fully integrated touch screen. Well, what does that really mean? If you have a touch screen, we can actually build more features because you're not limited to that with buttons and menus. This one does have the same stitch regulation, the same precise and cruise modes. It also has the basting and the manual. However, this one is a faster machine. So this one will actually speed up, and it can hold and it can go faster. So what that means is as you get more comfortable, the machine will be able to keep up with you as you get better in quilting. So it has a little bit of a higher end on it. And then it's a little bit more precise. It has what I call a little bit more of a quick response based on how we've created this. It also has an ability to save your personal preferences. So I might like a certain speed of the machine moving while I'm doing a little small detail, but when I'm doing larger flow items, I might want that machine to be able to go at a higher rate. You can set your preferences and automatically choose those. It has a few other features with the touchscreen and colors and functions like how the buttons operate, whether you want the needle to just go down or you want it to repeat that to go down and up. So there's a lot of wonderful details. This one, what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of go back in here and we're going to go to our needle camera for a minute. And I'm kind of here where I've done a bunch of stitching, but I'm just going to leave this. This isn't precise, and so I'm going to show you one more time a little bit more clear and show you the stitching. So this is precise, and so you'll notice that machine will speed up and slow down with me. That's the beautiful thing about stitch regulation. And now if you'll look at it, we have these stitches there at 10 per inch. I'm going to decrease this down to about 4, and I want you to see how much larger those stitches get. Can you see how much larger? Now again, because it's stitch regulated, if I speed up or slow down, the machine will still do so. And I'm just really looking to show you how much control you have. And we're going to go back up to 10, which is a very common. So customers, a lot of customers will use 10. So I wanted you to see how nice and how pretty that stitch is, and to show you the difference between like a 10 stitches an inch and down to a 4, and it goes up to 16. So one of the other great things is there are other settings that you have internal to the machine because it is the Pro Series. So you end up with, again, more features, more functions, a faster speed, and more control over it. So that's kind of what we have in our series. The M is at the lower price point, so it's kind of one of those beginning price points for the industry for you to think about. And I would encourage you to, again, log online at graceframe.com or reach out to a dealer. The R is our most popular machine, which is our most affordable stitch regulated machine. And the 15-inch machine size that you're looking at is very light and easy to use. It glides smoothly across the tracks. Again, going to our top end with our 15 Pro is where people kind of end at the pinnacle side at the 15-inch machine. So those are things to consider with free motion quilting. The process of gliding and moving that machine allow you to easily complete more quilts in less time. The frames are one of the first considerations. The second becomes what machine you're looking to use or what type of accessories. And then as you go through that, the budget kind of lets your mind build where you want. You can go up to 15-inch machines, and down the road, obviously the sky is the limit with 21 and bigger. At the end, we have a couple questions where people do want to know that yes, there are rulers and ruler bases, which we're not going to show you a lot, but I would encourage you to look online and find out what quilting is with a ruler or doing ruler work. The other thing we can do is trace papers and patterns with lasers. And at the end, you can also computer automate. And the computer automation will work with all of the Grace Company machines and all of the Grace Company frames and several of your home machines as well. So with that, I would encourage you again to stay tuned. Find out more information by going to graceframe.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to both our YouTube and our Facebook. And we love and look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Again, I'm Nathan Erznosnik. Thanks for joining us here at the Grace Company.